This is my Seat Leon and I've had it a while. I ordered it in November 2013 and I picked it up on the 1st of February 2014. I was 26 when I bought this car and I'm now 37. I was intending to keep it 3, maybe 4 years, but it's still here. It's my work car. I use it to teach people to drive. And for hundreds of people, this is the first car they have ever driven. And it's done over 213,000 miles. Actually, I made a video recently about everything that went wrong with this over 200,000 miles. I'll leave a link to that video up there. But this video is my review of this car, my 11-year review. I'm going to start off with how many doors it has. I ordered it as the 3-door model. It was £300 cheaper with only 3 doors. That was just a bonus. I ordered it like that because I like the look of it. Although in recent years, as looks become less important and practicality is, well, you live with practicality, I do regret that decision ever so slightly, but it is a very minor inconvenience. This is what the interior looks like. This is the door, electric windows, mirrors, door bins are fairly usable. I've had this since I was around about 17. You're supposed to use it to wipe the windows, but I've never used it for that. I just use it to stop things rattling around, and it works very well. We have the steering wheel. I adore these little knobs, sort of wheel things. So much easier to use than constantly pressing a button. I can increase and decrease the volume quickly. And this is the pre-facelift steering wheel, the original steering wheel this car should have, which is thinner. I actually prefer it to the facelift. I did have the facelift steering wheel in this car for a while, and it's just a bit too thick for me. I prefer this. And you can adjust the screen here like that, go through different menus with this, and then a scroll up and down here. You can have a digital speedo if you want it, which is around about there. This is from a 2020 model year car, although it looks pretty much exactly the same as the original in this car, but it has Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and it's fully integrated, works properly, even the voice assist works if I hold that down. I think this is the best climate control panel ever. Not because it's glitzy, but because it's so intuitive and easy to use. It's been around for a long time. It's a shame they stopped using it. My friend used to have this in his Mark V Golf, which was a 2004 car. And the system works well. It recircs the air automatically when it senses pollution outside. There's a couple of sun sensors around about here. So if the sun is shining on one side, it will cool that passenger more. And it monitors the humidity inside the car and keeps the windows clear of mist automatically, and that works actually very well. It's quite rare I need to press this button to give it an extra blast of demisting air. Actually, I'm going to go back to this climate control. This is one of the reasons why I still have this car. Not the only reason, but it's one of them. I'll get to that later. But this is what the gear stick looks like. Handbrake. This is an adjustable armrest, forwards and backwards and up and down. And inside it looks like that. Bit of space here, here and there for the pound for the little trolley. And the cup holders. Not the best because this does hit it, and you can, when you're changing gear, especially if it's in the front cup holder, knock your bottle. If it's very tall, it's annoying. It's just about okay though. I'd rather the cup holders be here as they should be. The reason why they're on the wrong side is because this can be, well, usually actually it's a left-hand drive car, and when they move the steering wheel from here to here, they don't bother switching this over because it's cheaper not to. So a little annoyance, but it's not too bad. And the door bins, they do actually go back quite a way. There's actually, just in here, a first aid kit hiding seat, although that's about 20 years old, so I do need to probably change that because I doubt anything in that works anymore. I'm sure the plasters are no longer sticky. This is what it looks like up here, the mirror, the lights, reading lights, and yes, both sun visors get a light and a mirror on both sides. The seats look like this. I find them incredibly comfortable, and it's one of the reasons why I bought the car, and I do sit in the car for long periods of time. And this is what the back looks like. The 3-door model has a shorter wheelbase, so you get less leg room back there in the 3-door model. If you want more leg room, get the 5-door model, but it's just about okay for me, and there's enough headroom as well. And I have Say It sound. I optioned it when I got the car. I can't remember how many speakers there are. I think there's 10 speakers and a subwoofer in the boot, and it has this little speaker up here. And it's one of my favorite things about the car. It really does work well, and obviously I can't demonstrate that through my lapel microphone. I want to tell you about this little device. It's one of the reasons why I've managed to keep the car as long as I have. I've had this for years now, and if you were to get one, they've updated it. It looks a little bit different. This is the new one, the black one, slightly taller, but less wide. Overall, the new one is smaller. And this is called OBDeleven, and yes, they are sponsoring the video, but I'm glad they agreed to, because I wanted to tell you about them anyway. What this allows me to do is read fault codes, clear fault codes, look at live data, which is instrumental in me figuring out what's wrong with the vehicle when there is something wrong, because I can see what the sensors are saying and therefore I know what's going on. I can change the settings for how the car behaves. For example, when I first got this car, if the engine was running and I opened the door, it would go beep, 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 beep. I turned that off, and I can retrofit things. For example, this car was available with a reversing camera, but this car doesn't have a reversing camera, so I could buy that camera, install it, and then this would allow me to set it up as if it was fitted from factory. So plug the device into the OBD2 port, connect to it via the app on your smartphone, and then, as you can see via the screen recording, you can hit the big scan button to scan all the modules, or you can press the little blue button to go through the individual modules. Let's go into engine. Let's look at faults. No faults. Let's look at live data. I can see data from all the sensors, or I can search for something specific like the mixtures for the long and short term fuel mixtures. Handy when you're diagnosing a car. Or I can go into the air conditioning module and look at the temperature after the evaporator and the refrigerant charge, and turn the air conditioning down to see if that changes, to see if it's working, which is handy if you're buying a used car in the middle of winter and you want to know if the air conditioning is actually working or if it's just blowing cold because it's cold outside. But if you don't know much about cars, you can use their one-click apps. Like, you can reset the service life. Now, this car's long life, so, well, the service plan is long life is what I mean, and you can't reset that via the dash. You have to reset it via the OBD2 port. I could retrofit the reversing camera that way as well. One touch app, easy. And I can make adjustments, and I've had enough of this mode button being illuminated, because it's illuminated when you're in individual or sport mode, and I'm always in individual mode. So I can search mode, I can turn it off, hold down the green button, and there we are. No more illuminated mode button. Bear in mind that OBDeleven cannot do all these things for all makes of cars, so check out how compatible it is with your car before you purchase it. OBDeleven does have full official VAG, BMW and Toyota group licenses, but also it can be used as a basic diagnostics tool for all cars newer than 2008 that support OBD2. Check out the link in the description. When I'm uploading this video, they have a winter sale on with up to 23% off. Thank you OBDeleven for sponsoring the video. I'm not going to go over everything that's gone wrong during my ownership with this car, because I've already done that in another video as I've explained, but I am going to say briefly whether or not I think this has been reliable. And when I consider how it's been used and how much it's been used, I think it's been very reliable. It's done well. It's done nearly 214,000 miles, but that doesn't paint the picture, because it's done around about 20,000 hours. And if I was to average 50 miles an hour, if I was to predominantly drive on the motorway and manage to average 50 miles an hour, that would be 1,000,000 miles. But this car hasn't averaged 50 miles an hour. Each tank, the computer usually says I average around about 10 miles per hour. And that's because of how this car is used. It's used by people who can't drive, people learning to start, learning to stop, learning to reverse. They start off learning how to drive around town, and when they get good enough that they're driving fast round country roads and driving on 70-mile-an-hour roads, shortly after that they pass and I get another beginner again who's driving slowly. So this car predominantly gets driven slowly by people who don't know how to drive. And when I consider that and how long it's lasted so far, and it's still going, still drives like it's new, I'm very happy with its reliability. However, if I were to judge the reliability of this car early on, I would have thought it was terrible, because it needed a new steering rack, because the steering was slightly notchy when you turned it, and it was drinking oil and needed a new cylinder head. On a very young car, this shouldn't be happening, but this was a completely new model, and I bought an early version of the new model. This car is not a redesign of the previous model, it's all new. And when you buy an early version of something that's complicated and completely new, there's a much higher chance that you're going to have problems. They replaced the steering rack and the cylinder head under warranty, and they haven't gone wrong since. And they actually told me when they did the cylinder head that it was a revised part. They know there was a problem, so they had to make changes. I think it's only fair I talk about the wear and tear of the interior of this car, because it's had a lot of use, yet it looks new, don't you think? And that's because some parts are more new than others. This steering wheel is only 9 months old. I'm on my 3rd steering wheel. I replaced the gear knob about 3 years ago. Can't remember when I replaced the handbrake. This was re-trimmed in real leather because the original fake leather cracks. These seats are facelift seats, not the original pre-facelift. The facelift seats are more hard wearing because they don't have fake leather on the side bolster, which does crack on the pre-facelift, and the foam that you sit on is slightly firmer. On the pre-facelift model, the seats were slightly softer, but the foam would disintegrate and you'd end up hoovering it down there underneath as it would fall out the bottom of the seat. Doesn't seem to be a problem with these facelift seats though. The carpet I replaced because the black material of the carpet, whatever that fabric material is, was wearing away and it was going white. It was wearing away to the bottom of the carpet. There was no carpet left and 2 holes was appearing. This I replaced about a year ago because it was sagging in the corners. I'm a bit upset about that because it started to sag a long time ago, but I kept forgetting about it and I could have had it done under warranty if I'd have done it soon enough. Although all these components that I'm talking about, I didn't need to replace. They would still be fine today, I'm fairly confident. If I didn't replace them, they just looked worn, that's all, and I wanted to keep it looking fresh. However, this thing I did need to replace. I actually wore my seatbelt out because I'm usually sitting in the passenger side of the car. The seatbelt is predominantly worn by me, so it's always in the same location. What happened to this ballistic nylon seatbelt? It was rubbing always in the same place of this buckle, and it started to wear through to the point where it became an MOT advisory. Not a problem on the driver's side because different people at different sizes sit here, so it's always wearing in different places and therefore it hasn't worn through anywhere. And recently I replaced the mirror switch, which I kind of needed to replace because that was starting to crack. It's only about £20 I think from memory, but every time I get in the car I adjust the mirror, and then when my pupil gets in the car they adjust the mirror too. So I didn't need to replace these things, most of them at least. The car would still be working, but it keeps the car looking fresh. And replacing these parts and keeping the car, the inside of the car, looking new, well, that's a lot cheaper than replacing the whole car. So from my point of view, I'm getting good value for money from doing so and still driving around in the car that feels nice and fresh and new, and a nice steering wheel to hold. You hold the steering wheel all the time. If it feels manky, it makes the whole car feel manky. I find this Seat Leon strikes a good balance between comfort and agility. It's a comfortable car. I can drive it comfortably for a very long time, yet when I get to a twisty country road, it's also a lot of fun. It's not a sports car, but it's a big step on from the previous generation Leon and one of the better handling cars in its class. And I think one of the reasons why that is the case is because when this model was released, it shed 100 kilos across the range of Leons, so all the trim levels, is about 100 kilos less. And if you take away 100 kilos, you can get a lot more out of the car. It's not an SUV, it's not high up, it's a low centre of gravity, so it's engaging to drive. It has the smaller 1.4 litre engine up front, which is lighter, so you have less weight at the front, so it's less inclined to understeer, but also it's less inclined to do the one tyre fire where you spin up one wheel. I think that's partly down to its electronic differential, but I think it's a lot to do with the fact it's just set up better than the previous model. What I would like is fully independent rear suspension. This car has a torsion beam which works well, but independent is better. Now you can get this car with the independent rear suspension, but you have to get the 1.8 litre engine if you want petrol, and I don't think that engine is as good as this 1.4 because it uses more fuel, but produces the same power up until 4,000 revs. So you only actually get more power above 4,000 revs, and you spend most of your time, the vast majority of your time, below 4,000. So you're going to be using more fuel all the time, but rarely ever having more power. So it doesn't seem like a very good deal to me. And this engine is lightweight. This whole car with this engine weighs 1,211 kilos curb weight, which I believe means the car including a 75 kilo driver and the petrol tank being 3/4 full. I think that's how they measure it, I'm not sure. But either way, it's a very light car for this class, one of the lightest in its class. The engine is 1.4 litres, petrol, turbocharged, inline-4 with a water-cooled intercooler. Claimed it has 138 brake horsepower at 4,000 revs and 250 Newton meters of torque at 1,500 revs. But when I've tested it, and I tested it when it had 145,000 miles on it, after I had the valves cleaned, because they do get a bit clogged up on the engine, so you do need to clean the valves every 60,000 miles, I find. But when I tested it, it had 147 brake horsepower and 297 Newton meters of torque. Let's see how that makes this car accelerate. So I'll pull out onto this road and then I'll floor it. So, looks clear, let's go. Get the wheels straight, now floor it in first. There's 35 miles an hour. And there's 6,000 revs and 60 miles an hour. The gear stick is light and precise. It's a nice smooth gear stick, that one, easy to use, and it's easy to rev match. So I'll rev match down the gears now. So there's fourth, there's third, there's second. Manually rev matching with the gas pedal. The pedals are set up nicely to do that also. This car is very similar to the Volkswagen Golf, the Audi A3 and the Skoda Octavia. They share the same chassis and engines. It's the appearance that really is the biggest difference. And one of the reasons why I chose the Seat Leon over the Audi or the VW is because it was £3,000 cheaper than the Golf at the time for the same equipment level, and £6,000 cheaper than the Audi A3 with the same equipment level from my memory. Also, I actually preferred how this one looks. If you're interested, this is what the car looks like from the front and from the side and from the rear. But that is purely subjective. It's up to you what you think looks good in a car. Something I like about the interior of this car is I don't have a cable and a phone laying around somewhere. Okay, my phone's here at the moment, but usually I just plug it in there. Stays out of the way in the glove box, and Android Auto. Nice. Driving around town, it's comfortable, it soaks up the bumps, the gas pedal is easy to modulate, the clutch pedal is easy to use, it's easy to feel the bite point, but the brakes, they're not so great. They're powerful, they stop you quickly, but they're over assisted and don't provide feedback. So until you're used to them, you probably end up braking too hard a few times. But once you are used to them, it's not a problem. So for long-term ownership, it's not really an issue. And that's actually one of the main problems with this car when it comes to using it as a learner car. But it's not just this car that has this problem, most cars do. And that is the brake pedal these days. Too light, no feedback. If you want to brake firm, you brake gently. If you want to brake gently, you brake so gently you can barely feel the pedal under your foot. You get used to it, but it's not intuitive for a new driver. So it takes a bit of practice for new drivers to get used to the braking systems on most modern cars. Whereas with older cars, if you wanted to brake hard, give it some welly. You're going to feel yourself pressing that brake pedal hard. And if you want to brake gently, you don't brake as hard. You could feel resistance in the pedal, making it easy to modulate and more intuitive. Not something we have as much of today, because cars have been designed to have very little weight everywhere to make them easy and more luxurious to drive. But also that makes them less involving and less, well, the word I just used, intuitive. I have recently fitted 4 Michelin Premier 4 Plus tyres to this car. Now I need to tell you that I got those tyres for free from Michelin, although I paid for the fitting myself. But this video is in no way sponsored by Michelin. I am reviewing their product. I can say they're rubbish, or I could say they're good. And you might think, well, if you said they're rubbish, they're not going to give you any more. Would I want any more if they were rubbish? I would try some different tyres if they were rubbish. So it is going to be an honest opinion. The truth is though, I already knew they were pretty good. That's why I went to Michelin and said, hi, can I review some of those Premier 4 Plus tyres, please? Just going to test them out to see if they're all right, and I'll do a review on them. But yes, they are good, as I expected. I'm very sensitive to this car. I notice any slight differences because I've had it for so long. And when I fitted those 4 tyres, straight away, there was a noticeable difference in how refined the car was. It's not huge, and it could be a placebo. You know, the placebo effect wouldn't be true if you knew it was working. But as far as I could tell, the car was more refined. It was quieter and it was smoother. And actually, I wasn't thinking that when I drove the car. I forgot that I'd fitted them, and then I drove off, and then I thought, oh yes, fitted the tyres, haven't I? Because I thought it felt different. I can't test their wet weather performance though, which is what a touring tyre, the Premier 4 Plus is a touring tyre. And what a touring tyre is supposed to major on is comfort and wet weather safety. Safety and comfort essentially on the road. I don't have the facilities to test the wet weather performance. I'm on the road. This could be a subjective feeling, but no scientific measurement. But what I can say is when I ask my pupils to do the emergency stop, I'm glad I don't wear a wig. Something I enjoy about this car is how quiet it is at motorway speeds. I remember when I had the dual controls fitted, the guy fitting them was moaning that he had to cut through insulation that thick to fit them. So you had to take a piece out to be able to fit the dual controls, and how it's a lot thicker than the previous Land on the previous shape, other variants of the Land, the Golf, the A3, etc. And you notice it because at speed it is quiet. It's not a Mercedes S-Class, but compared to other hatchbacks in its class, I do find this one of the quieter cars at 70 miles an hour, and it's quieter than my other half's 2023 Toyota Corolla. So a much younger car at motorway speeds, this is more hushed. So why then, after 11 years, I still have this car, even though I was planning to replace it after 3, maybe 4 years? Well, I'm not actually that sure. I'm always thinking about replacing the car. I always have a car in mind I could replace it with. At the moment, I have 2. The Mazda 3 Saloon, although you can't get the top spec Takumi version of that anymore, which is a shame because that would be the one I'd want, or the Audi A3 Saloon, S-Line, 1.5, manual, Tech Pack Pro. I even know how much it costs, £38,000. I know the spec, I know which one I would want, but that's a lot of money. And I think that's what's been holding me back, and what's been making me look after this and keeping this longer, is that to step up, to replace it, it's not even stepping up, is it really? To replace it, because it's a car on the same level, just the newer equivalent, I have to pay so much money, and essentially I'm getting more or less the same machine. It's got a few more features, and yes, I would like those features, but is a heads-up display, adaptive cruise control, and well, actually they're the 2 things that I quite like from the new cars. Are those 2 things worth spending £38,000 on a new car to have the equivalent car with those new improvements? That's a hard one. That's a hard sale for the dealer and a hard purchase for me. I know when I went from the Seat Ibiza I had before this to the Lounge, it was an easy decision. This cost me, after discount, £19,000, and I sold my Ibiza for £5,000. So that was £14,000 with 0% finance as well. So it was £14,000 for what felt like a significant upgrade. This rode the road much better. It's more refined and more powerful, and it was more comfortable with more space in the interior, which is nice because I'm not sitting so close to my learner all the time, which means they're less likely to elbow me, I'm less likely to knock into them. Whereas it's still small enough that it's easy to drive. Oh yeah, that's the other feature I like from modern cars, the cameras. This doesn't have a camera, although I could retrofit a factory one to it if I wanted. So I just went off a tangent there, because I was trying to remember the other feature I'd like from the new cars. I think really, if you want a new car today, you're getting an upgrade if you want something electric. That's where the difference is. But if you want a petrol manual car, it's a lot of money. If you've already got a car that's 10 years old, you're not getting a hugely different car if you're sticking to petrol and manual. So it's a hard sell, and I think that's one of the main reasons why I've kept this car. It still does the job it did when it was new. I've not noticed a decline in any way. It's not any worse, and the new ones, as far as I can tell, they're not a great deal better, unless of course you're looking for some kind of plug-in hybrid, strong hybrid, or electric. It's getting dark, which is why I've had to put a light on. Hopefully you can still see me. But earlier on in the video, I said one of the reasons why I've still got this car is because of that climate control panel. And believe it or not, there is truth in what I'm saying there. Because when they released the new Leon, I was excited. I spend a lot of hours in the car, and the new Leon is a car I may buy. So I'm very interested. And I went to go and have a play. Firstly, I was disappointed in the looks. I think it's been designed to look like an SUV, and then they've tried to make a car out of an SUV instead of just making the car look like, well, it's subjective. Let's move on. I'll tell you something, I think the best styling is when they create something and every generation they improve it, tweak it, get closer to perfection. They get their identity, like VW, like Audi, like Porsche. Opinions over, let's move on now to my experience of this Leon. So I'm testing this car and I'm thinking, it's not much different to my current Leon. How has this moved things on? Is it going to improve my life considering how much time I spend in it? Is it worth all that extra money? And the climate control on that car was infuriating. You had these things you had to slide your finger on, and or use the touchscreen, and just found it difficult to use. And I was thinking, my pupils need to use that. I'm spending money on a machine that is more or less the same but less convenient to use. Do I want to do that? And that really put me off the car. If the car was improved in many ways, then yes, I would have been happy to part with the money to have something that ultimately is going to improve my life, because I spend a lot of time in the car, and if it's better, if it's more comfortable or something, it's going to be better for me. The question is though, if they had stuck to this sort of climate control panel where it's easy to use, not in a touchscreen, would I have bought the new Leon? I don't know, because that wasn't the case, but maybe I would have done. Maybe the reason why I didn't get the new car was because the climate control panel wasn't as easy to use. I never thought I'd be saying that. Well, I need to wrap this video up now because it's getting dark. It is dark. I haven't spoken about the boot. When you look at the literage of the boot, it's a bit smaller than average for this class of car, but that doesn't tell you how practical it is, because it's actually a very usable space with a big opening, and I've even got a dishwasher in the back with the seats folded down. There is a big lip to lift things over. Not a problem for your day-to-day shopping, but it makes getting a dishwasher out the back harder. And that dishwasher did have all the packaging still intact. So how long am I going to keep this car for? Well, I don't know. As I've explained, I don't see the point in upgrading because I don't feel like it's much of an upgrade, but I do feel like I'm spending a lot of money. And I'm starting to get a bit of a problem because I've had this car since I was 26. I'm now 37. It's a significant proportion of my adult life so far. And therefore I'm starting to get a little bit attached to the car. Also, it's helped me earn a living, it's helped me make videos, it's taught many people to drive. But although I consider myself a car person, I enjoy cars, my whole life I have, very much into them, I'm not going to keep a car for sentimental reasons alone, because I don't have the space to do so, and I don't see the point in trying to find somewhere to keep a car just to let it sit there and rot away. I'd rather sell it on and let somebody else use it. One day that may change. One day I may have loads of space, who knows, and be like, oh yeah, it's just sitting there, it's fine. But at the moment that's not the case, and I can't see that happening anytime soon because land is really expensive. Where I will draw the line though is welding. If I need to weld the chassis of this car because of rust, which is hopefully a long way away, then I will be getting a new car, not because I'm upgrading, but because I need a replacement. In which case then I will have to make a decision as to what one I'm going to buy. But at the moment, when I replace this car, I don't know. I'm happy with how it is, and the new cars on the market at the moment aren't really enough to tempt me. And also my other half has the Corolla, which has the latest systems, the adaptive cruise control and the lane assist, not lane departure warning. That is horrible, but what keeps you in the middle of your lane is driving the motorway. So when I do long journeys, I'm actually more likely to use that because it's very easy to use on long journeys. But I think that's all I've got to say about the car. Hopefully something comes along in the future that makes me think, yes, that's the car I want, and I go and get that before this car needs replacing. If you found the video interesting, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to get my future videos, and until the next one, cheerio.